Working. We're now officially starting the Shiur now. Masechet Bava Kama Daf Samech Aleph Amud Aleph in the bottom of the page. We are in Samech Aleph Amud Beis today, going to be, but Samech Aleph Amud Aleph is where we begin. Okay, Tanan Hosam. Delim of Sik and Lepeya. These are the things that interrupt between one field and the other, creating two different fields, each one with a separate need for Peya. Hanachal, the river. Vashlulis, whatever that means, we're going to see. Derech HaYochid, the derech of the individual, 4 amos. The derech HaRabim, 16 amos. Says the Rashba, B'Shem Yerushalmi, we need both. Yachid and Rabim. Just like Rabim is always there, the derech HaRabim functions summer and winter, so to derech HaYochid, in order to really be considered as hefsek, it has to be used, all seasons of the years. My shlulis. Oh, what do you call shlulis exactly? How do you define the shlulis of the Mishnah? Amar Rav Yudah Shmuel. Mokam shemeg shomim shololin sham. Yes, shololin means like to get collected. The place where the water of the rain collect, that's called shlulis. That's like in modern Hebrew. Shlulit means just a puddle. Could be a small one or a big one. There's a place where throughout the winter, you have the gshomim, water collected there, and you probably enjoy them. People wouldn't waste water, not even today. And that's considered a separate unit to separate between the different fields. However, Bevai Omar B'Yochanan argues, and he says, Amas hamayim shemechalekes sholol le'agapea. This is Amas hamayim. Amas hamayim is not something heavenly made. Amas hamayim is something made by human beings. It's a canal. By the way, I saw in Tiferes Yisrael, he always uses German words, he translates and he says the word canal. Yeah, canal, I guess in German it's the same word. Yeah, it was from Hamburg. And la agapea, in other words, the Amas hamayim, the canal, which is 1 amma deep and purposely dug by human beings in order to irrigate the fields, and it gives the shalal, shlulit, it gives the loot, the booty, the loot of water to the other parts. Meaning from that canal, you have other small canals or people drawing water to the other parts of the field. It's all irrigation system, and the Amas hamayim is there 1 amma deep, as we discussed earlier in the parak. That's what's called Amas hamayim, depth of 1 amma. And now if you have this amma in between the fields, you now know you have 2 fields for peya, each one a separate field. So it's a machlokes. Do we mean just a puddle, or do we mean a man-made proper irrigation canal? That's the other pshat. Now, says the Gemara, as we saw many times, it's a machlokes chad sitrit. You know what that means? It's a one-side machlokes. One agrees with the other, while the other doesn't agree with him. A agrees with B, B doesn't agree with A. Explains the Gemara. Mandoma, we're in the second to last line of Samech Aleph Amud Aleph, La'agapeho. Mandoma mokum shemeg shomim shololin sham. The one who says that, the one who says that that's where the water gets collected naturally because it's just a puddle. If that's considered something that stops just a regular puddle, or the most or the irrigation canal, of course, stops between the fields, it's more of an important thing. Soon we'll see why, but I think you can feel why. However, it's not mutual. The one who says that Amas hamayim, the proper irrigation canal or aqueduct, sometimes it's called, if that's Amas hamayim is something that stops between the fields, that's something choshuv. But if you just have all those ditches and you have those crevices in the ground where the water gets collected, that doesn't really stop between the fields. You know why? Dehanu, because those bagni de'ara mikru, they are just called ba'agni de'ara or nagni de'ara. That means they are just part of the field. Says the Gemara, I checked it in Bava Basra because nobody here explains it except for one Achron, which I didn't trust so much. So basically, the explanation according to the Gemara in Bava Basra is agni de'ara, when you have a small hole in the ground, it's not really called a hefsek. It's part of the ground. The ground usually has small crevices and small mounds that are part of the ground. Maybe in Switzerland, all the ground is very, except for the mountains, I don't know, everything is very, very leveled. Most parts of the world, ground is not supposed to be 100% leveled. It's supposed to have some, bumps and also crevices up and down. And therefore, when you talk about a properly irrigated thing, man-made, 1 amma deep, that's a hefsek. But when you talk about a small place, which is just part of the field, because it happens to be a bit lower, and therefore the water gets collected there, but it's not an official place, not made by people, possibly not so deep, and it's just something natural the puddle happens to collect, that's called part of the field. It's like the Agni de Ara. It's like the Agni could be possibly, I saw you. Agni may be like a vessel. It's like a vessel of the field. What this Achron was saying, Rav Shulevitz, which may be right, is he says that serves the field. He says that the shlulis is not called a separate thing because it serves the field. My question is, Amas Hamayim also serves the field. So I don't know the difference. I think the difference is like I was saying, that the Amas Hamayim is official, man-made, and nicely masudar. That's a stoppage. The Shenken, stam, a natural thing in between, not so deep and not so planned, it's just part of the field. It's not separate enough. And therefore that wouldn't be considered as a separate unit to render each one a different name. We have two people from London who want to ask questions. I saw the order. Yes. Now we are in Samech Aleph Amud Beis, the top of the page in the Mishnah. Says the Heilige Mishnah. I saw the Mishnah, and to be honest with you, I was stumped and stunned, and I didn't know what to do. I thought it was completely wrong till now. But then I saw the Meforshim, and they helped me. Says the Mishnah. Listen to this. But before we start the Mishnah, you tell me, what did I tell you every time we spoke about fire, like a broken record? What did I tell you all the time? Where did the fire start? Did I ignite it in my friend's field? B'chavona? No. I did it originally where? In my field, in my backyard. I like to celebrate the Vietnamese, whatever that is. Yeah. The Guy Fawkes Day. That's a holiday in England. I turn on the fire and I ignite it. And then mistakenly, in a way that is not so responsible, it spread into my friend's field. Now, I didn't dream it up at night. It says so in the earlier parts of the Masechta, Kitei Tze'esh. We explained the pasuk Kitei Tze'esh, the fire went out. I didn't put it there. Look at this Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Hamadlik betoich sheloi. The Mishnah comes here in the middle of the Masechta and says, a person who lit fire in his domain, in his place, ad kama tavo ad leika, how far should the fire be between him and his friend's field in order to say that he is potur, that he doesn't have to pay. And then we have a machloikes. You know what should be the distance between him if it was in his own field and his friend's field? It's a machloikes. Soon you'll get to my question. Opinion number one. Ablaza ben Azari says you have to look and see as if the person is in the middle of the field called field Beis Kor. Beis Kor is a very large field. Yeah, it has 274 amos, more or less, but 274 amos. I remember the number. It's very complicated how to get to that cheshbon in the beginning of the 7th parak of Bava Basra. But basically, 274 by 274, half of that is about what? 150? No, 140? Yeah, something. 136. Lamaisa, the Meforshim do say it doesn't have to be mamish on the millimeter because ki base school, it's more or less. So if you have 100 and how much is that? 137, more or less that between the fire and your friend's field, then you're potter. Then that's considered safe distance between your fire in your field and your friend's field. That's opinion number one. And soon you'll get my problem. Rings a bell? We saw that yesterday. Ablezer says, you know how much should be the distance between my fire and my friend's field? F and F, fire and field, 16 amas, like the Rishus Harabim of Shabbos, as we saw yesterday in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says the distance has to be 50 amos between your fire and your friend's field. If it's 50 amos, then you're potter. If I cap the caution, the safety measures, the safe distance of 50 amos, about 25 meters, that I have to, then I don't have to pay, even if anything happened. I'm considered as playing safe. Rabbi Shimon says no. The person should pay for the fire. Anything goes according to the dleika. The Gemara is going to explain what Rabbi Shimon means. The measurement, according to Rabbi Shimon, is according to the dleika. What that means, we're going to see later. The Gemara in the Havamina thinks Rabbi Shimon always mechayiv you. He's always mechayiv you. We'll discuss it later. Why am I so excited? What did I want from you a few minutes ago? You get the question here. The Mishnah comes and says, Hamadlik betoch shelo, as if it's a new case. That denotes as if up until now we spoke about a friend who lights fire in his friend's field. So first of all, I had egg on my face because that's not what I told you all the time. I thought my friends in Amud Yomi are going to fire me. Here's the pan. Baruch Hashem, the Rashba is on my side. Baruch Hashem. And then I saw some other Achroinim, Tosas Yom Tov, Tiferes Yisrael. Says the Rashba. We all the time spoke about somebody who's in his own field, with a fire in his own field. There was always the case. Why do we stress over here, Madlik B'toch Shelo? Why do we say it now? Good morning. Why did the Mishnah have to say it now? Because the Mishnah wants to tell it precisely that. You know when we care about, that's actually not the Rash, but that's Achronim. The Tosas Yom Tov says, the Mishnah wants to stress and tell me, you know why we care about distances, be it 16 amos or 50 amos or half a base core? It's only because we all the time speak about making fire in your own field. That is to stress again, to nail it in, to rub it in, to tell you that if the same thing would happen in your friend's field, it wouldn't help. Let me explain to you what's going on here. Let's say, oh, exactly, very good. Let's say my friend has a very large field and nothing seems to be growing there. Only 100 amas away. 100 amas away, there's very nice trees that grow. But right now, everything is completely arid, and I just want to set my fire there without permission. I go to my friend's field and I start my lag ba'omer bonfire or guy focus or whatever that is. That's nice. I'm not near anything. And I would say, look, I kept a distance. All of a sudden, the fire goes crazy and it drops 100 amas away. That can happen. Does it happen in Telstone? So I'm no, my friend. Says the Mishnah, all these safety measurements are all very nice as long as you're doing b'soich shelcho. If you're doing it in your own field. If you did it in your friend's field, no distance. That could be 5 kilometers away. You are, very nicely said, as Rashi says later on, you're a mazik. Entering another person's field and making the fire there without permission, that alone, you're a mazik. I was out of control. Who could have imagined you would hit the trees that far? That will not work in court, in the Jewish court, in the Beth Din. Why? Because you're in your friend's field. The whole distance story, one second, please, is only when you're doing it in your own field, b'reshus, and then it's spread. Then you can say, I can make fire in my own field, my home is my castle, I can do whatever I want. Elamai, I have to keep a safe distance. Now, that's one shot. The Rashba says something else. Rashba says that our Mishnah, and this is something interesting for you to know for B'kol Torah Kula, which I told you yesterday, the Mishnah wants to stress that the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah are talking about the same reality exactly of lighting fire in my own field. And if you remember well, yesterday's Shiur, in Samachalaf Amud Aleph, what did we say is the distance between the fire and the field? We said only one opinion, Samachalaf Amud Aleph, we says Derech HaRabim. We said a fence, we're not talking about a fence. And when we spoke about the width, difference in width, we spoke about one opinion, which is who? Rabbi Lezer. Here, Rabbi Lezer seems to be one of 4 opinions. Base school, Rabbi Lezer 16, Rabbi Kiva 50, and we have Rabbi Shimon, which says something entirely different. You know who Halacha is like? Rabbi Shimon. That comes to teach you a rule, says the Rashba. When you have a stam, the achakach machloikes, Halacha is not like stam. Very, very important to know. When you have an opinion mentioned anonymously, without mentioning who is the author of the opinion, and then that opinion appears as part of a debate, then we say halacha is not necessarily like that opinion. If it's the other way, machloikes v'achakach stam halacha kistam, which means if we'd have the discussion between the 4 opinions, and then Rabbi Lezer's opinion would have been mentioned as the one and only, as the unanimous narrator of the Mishnah, halacha would be like him. But if first of all we say the stam, the one opinion anonymously, and we anonymously but not unanimously, anonymously, and then you have the different opinions, halacha is not like that one opinion. That's a rule in the Torah, which I'm very happy to see here in front of my eyes. Okay, question before we get questions. Still okay? Yeah. It was. That's the whole. No. Rabbi, nope. Look at the previous Mishnah, my friend. It mentions both. The previous Mishnah was short and sweet. Goder oy derech harabim I know. The previous Mishnah spoke about a fence, derech rabim, which is 16 amos, and a river. The river, the kettle, and the bird. The previous Mishnah spoke about height and width, both. Or tenor. Okay. Of course. I meant to say, both are mentioned. Now, the Mishnah here elaborates on one nekuda from the previous Mishnah, which is the width, and comes to tell you, Rabbi Lezer is not the only game in town. And actually, Rabbi Shimon is going to take over, even though it's mentioned as if that's the stam narrative of the Mishnah. And that is something the Mishnah wants us to know. If I understood correctly, that's what the Rashba is saying. Says the Heilige Gemara, Baiter Gemara Samechalef Amud Beis, beautiful Gemara every day. Baruch Hashem is zoichet to learn Torah Hashem. Says the Gemara, frek the Gemara, V'leisle Rabbi Shimon Shiur bedleika. The Gemara understands in Havamina. The Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon's opinion is Kivyochel is wild as the fire itself. Rabbi Shimon says fire, it can never be safe enough. You'd always be chayiv. That's what Gemara thinks. Rabbi Shimon says, Hakal lefiyad leika. You have fire in your back door, backyard, and it hits someone else, it's spread into someone else, you're always chayiv. I don't care how far it was. That's what the Gemara thinks in the Havamina. Frag the Gemara, is that so? Doesn't it have a shiur? Doesn't it have a measurement to be on a safe distance when it comes to dleika, when it comes to fire? That's none. I'll show you something from Bava Basra that disproves you, and that talks about an oven. Back then, we all know ovens and also kiros and ovens were obviously fueled by fire. Yeah, that's before Mr. Edison came to the world. That's none. It says over there, Lo yamid odom tanu b'toich habais. Let's say a person lives even in a private house. When I say even, this parak, the second parak of Bava Basra, talks about neighbors, about damages between neighbors. Let's say I live in a private house, which for Israelis is the big thing. Oh, villa. The person lives in a private house, and he has a small house. It's private, there's low ceiling, and he has to cook with an old-fashioned tanu using something called fire. He's not allowed to place the tanu in his house, unless there's distance between the tanu and the ceiling. You need daled amos. Even in modern kitchens, the stovetop, which is called a hob. It's called a hob in proper English. Yeah, the stovetop has distance, right, between this and the ceiling of the kitchen, usually, right, on purpose. Sometimes they even have this absorber over there. Yeah, whatever that's called. Yeah. So now this person has a small kitchen with a tanur, and between the tanur and the ceiling, there's less than daled amos. The town can come to him, the neighbors can come to him and say, your house is unsafe. I have no neighbors. If you have less than daled amos between your tanur and the ceiling, your house may go on fire. Don't tell me it's my house. I don't care if it goes on fire. It's going to damage everybody else. There are neighboring houses. So even if he lives on his own, he should have safety measurements in his house because it disturbs the environment. All the more so if he has an upstairs neighbor. That's Ashi and Tosfos. I'm bringing both. That's for sure. If he has an upstairs neighbor, which say, you want to burn, fine, but not me. And therefore, you have to maintain 4 amos distance. Now, Hoyam Amidu Ba'aliyah. Let's say the person is on the second floor and he has a very high ceiling, but there's a neighbor below him. There's a downstairs neighbor. Now, downstairs, it can also cause fire. Yeah, in other words, if it's too hot, the oven and the fire, which is obviously on the floor of the kitchen, that's where it was located, then if it's not safe enough, if the ceiling slash a floor, very good, ceiling cum floor between the two of them is too thin, or made out of wood, or even without it, it's too thin, it can burn and go downstairs and burn the downstairs house. You have to have a ma'aziva, like a layer, to strengthen it of 3 tfachim. If you don't have a tanu, but you have a kira is wider, but the heat is less intense. In Ilchas Shabbos, if you learn, that's always the difference. Tanu is conically shaped like a pyramid, and the heat is more intense because it's more concentrated. A kira is much wider. It's double and is not conically. It's like that, like a long rectangle, and therefore there all you need is tefach, because tanu is more intense. You need 3 tefachim. If you have a kira, you have a tanu which is like low class kind of tanu, less hot. All you need is 1 tefach of difference. Okay, so that's what you have to have. These are the safety regulations for a good Jewish kitchen. Ask your wife, what's halacha for a good Jewish kitchen? She tell the kashrus. She's right. Also, you need to have safety measures. Safety measures. Yeah, safety measures is the right word, I think. Kipshuto measures. You have to have daled amos above and 1 or 3 below tefachim. V'im hezik. Here comes a big surprise. What would be if I was a good boy, American, mamish? I kept all the safety regulations. Yeah, like a nice Anglo. And what happened? Still fire caught. And my neighbor's house got burned. What do? Says Tanakama, Mishalim Hashizik. You still have to pay. Why? We're going to see later. I saw the Meforshim, I saw the Ketzos HaChoshen even about that. If he did damage by mistake, something happened, you follow the safety regulations, measures, something happened, you still got to pay, says Tanakama. We'll explain why later. Rabbi Shimon, no, Rabbi Shimon is being more mekel, he's lenient. And he says, Lo nemru shiur alalu, the whole reason why these measurements are mentioned, in order to say that if he did do it, he's covered, he's potter from paying. Yeah, that's like the insurance. That's like people, I followed the regulations, so now I covered myself, I don't have to pay. So you see, Rabbi Shimon, as opposed to Tanakama, says what? He says that if you followed the regulations of keeping distance, the safety measures, excuse the pun, the measures, what do you have to do? Nothing. I followed the instructions. So you see, Rabbi Shimon is being extremely self-contradictory. In our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon said, I don't care. No. Even if you kept very, very safe distance, somehow the fire spread, you got to pay, baby. And here says, no, it's also fire. When it comes to the kitchen and the oven, Rabbi Shimon says, well, if you follow the regulations, he's a good, safe boy. He's nice. He's behaving in a safe way. Then it's okay. Then b'diavad doesn't have to pay. What's going on with Rabbi Shimon? Explains the Gemara. You misunderstood Rabbi Shimon completely in the Mishnah. Omar Rav Nachman, Omar Abba Baravua, Hakol lefi goyvad leika. When Rabbi Shimon said in the Mishnah, and highly recommend you raise your glance 1 centimeter above the end of the Mishnah, where Rabbi Shimon actually appears, what does he say? Hakol lefi hadleika. He didn't say potu. What does it mean in Hebrew, hakol lefi hadleika? You don't have one measurement which is set in stone. It all goes according to the dleika, which means Rabbi Shimon says something very, very simple, which soon going to see is halacha l'maisa. Says Rabbi Shimon like this. He says to all his friends, his fellow Tanoim, listen, people, listen, hold it. You're telling me 16 amos, and you're telling me 50 amos, and you're half a base score. No, you can't measure fire with a millimeter. In other words, you don't have one set distance for all types of fire. You have to know the size of the fire. If the fire was a cutesy little unsuccessful barbecue for whatever, Independence Day of Iceland, and what, the tiny bit of fire, then, and the distance was definitely, any firologist would tell you that the distance between the small fire and the field was good enough, is potter. If it's a big fire, that's a big bonfire of Lag BaOmer, of all the kids that got excited and collected trees for the past half a year, and it's a huge fire, then you need a huge distance. In other words, it's all ratio. It all balances according to the ratio. That's what Rabbi Shimon says. He never said that you're always chayiv. No. If Enochanami Eidim would come and would testify that the fire versus the distance was of good measurement, for this kind of fire, you need this kind of measurement. And by the way, Shulchan Aruch doesn't give you numbers. He says you have to see Lefia Ayin, Lefia Inyan, according to the Inyan. Then you're potur. But Rabbi Shimon is consistent. Yes, you're potur, but you only potur, but you don't have clear cut, set in stone measurements. Omar of Yosef, we're going to finish, and then I will ask questions and answer my questions. Omar of Yosef, Omar of Yehuda, Omar Shmuel, Halacha ke Rabbi Shimon. And I saw the Shulchan Aruch. V'chen Omar of Nachman, Omar Shmuel, Halacha ke Rabbi Shimon, and that's the halacha. Ze halacha. Halacha ke Rabbi Shimon. What does that mean? Halacha ke Rabbi Shimon. Let's summarize. I'd like to bring the Shulchan Aruch, but didn't get to bring it today because it's Monday, and I'm rushed after davening. I saw the Shulchan Aruch yesterday a few times. Shulchan Aruch basically says as follows. Shulchan Aruch says like this. We pass in the Rabbi Shimon. What does that mean? There's no one clear-cut distance which is safe enough between your fire and the field. It all depends on the size of the fire. However, says Shulchan Aruch, and here he argues on other Rishonim, on some Rishonim, says Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Shimon does agree to other concepts which we learned yesterday, which I think is very apt to review now. Do you remember what we said yesterday about the different structures of fire? Some fires go like that. That's called kolachas, or Rambam says kodachat. Likdoch is like to drill or to bore. It's like boring a hole. It's like straight. Kodachat, that fire, the distances help it. Either you have a goder, you have a fence. Shulchan Aruch also says that there's no set height for the fence. Same idea of Rabbi Shimon. Depends on the height of the fire. You can't have a fence that little with a fire that high. In other words, it's all according to the eye, according to the natural measurement that we have, the balance. Now, what happens if the fire is nichpefes? It's a type of fire which, because of the wind or because of some of the structure of the woods, is the fire that keeps bending over all the time and inclining somewhere. There, nothing would help. Why? Because when you have fire that's affected by the wind, a strong wind that keeps moving its fire that direction, then you're always chayiv, because that kind of fire would go anywhere and everywhere, as I saw with my own eyes. Now, another idea which we have to mention is the water. The water, says Shulchan Aruch, does make a difference. And if you have a river or a creek, whatever you call it, a stream of 8 amos, then enechinami, the fire, that is called a stoppage, even according to Rabbi Shimon. Because water stops fire more than other things. So even Rabbi Shimon would agree, yeah, I don't know about the nichpefes, but regular fire, according to Rabbi Shimon, does have a measurement of 8 amos of distance if it's with water. Some people say, as we saw yesterday, if you have 8 amos of a river that sometimes runs and sometimes doesn't, what's called in Arabic wadi, sometimes in the winter, yes, in the summer, no. So then some say because it's very wet over there from the water, then, yeah, it's not a good place for fire to catch. Then also 8 amos is good enough. And if you have water, then even a smaller distance is good enough. But that's basically the halacha. That's halacha, hopefully not lemaisa. We should know of such stars, but that's halacha like Rabbi Shimon. We follow not one set of rules regarding the width or regarding the height, but regarding the nichpefes versus kodachas, regarding the nahar, then we do have a set rule that the fire would stop by the water. Yeah, or alternative, the fire that always tends to go to the side would get anywhere. That's more chomer. One more thing to say, and then I'll listen to you. My question is the question of the Rishonim and Achronim. They ask a question here. Why is there really a difference? At the end of the day, I don't know, I hope I didn't manage to pull the wool over your eyes, but I said at the end of the day, there is a question here. Why is it when it comes to fire, Rabbi Shimon says, listen, the guy tried. The guy really kept safe distance, nice guy, just moved from America. He keeps the safety regulations like a good boy. He kept 50 amos and the fire was small, and then went out of control. Says Rabbi Shimon, no, forgive the guy. What can he do? It's makas shamayim. That's the Lashon Shulchan Aruch and the Rishonim before him. It's like from shamayim. It's like oina. It's not his fault. Yeah, okay, and that's how we paskin. Yet, when it comes to the person who kept safety regulations in the kitchen, and he did maintain 4 amos, let's say, above the stove, between the stove and the ceiling, then we paskin like Rabbanon that say, bad boy. Even if you kept the regulations, you got to pay if your upstairs neighbor's burnt. What's the difference? Explain. I'm combining here the K'tois, a very, very famous Achron, the K'tois HaChoshen, which is studied a lot in yeshivas. The K'tois HaChoshen explains the difference. He says like this. I'll be with you soon. He says the K'tois like this. The case of fire, we know the ones he kept such a distance, 50 amos, 16 amos, small fire, nothing's supposed to happen. Really, b'derech hateva, naturally, normally, nothing's supposed to happen. It happened out of norm. That's not normal. That's oinus. It's really, wow, the guy's an honest guy. I don't know if he's an honest guy, but he's an honest mistake. Yeah, really, nothing should have happened. The case of the Tanu, listen to this, we say no. Really, Daled Amos is not a good safety measurement. It's not a foolproof safety regulation. But because people, I'm combining now the K'tos with the Rishonim before him, people have to cook. And not everybody has a fancy villa with a kitchen that big. You know, these fancy kitchens and the fancy houses. Not everyone can afford it. The guy's in Avrech with 10 kids. What do you want from his life? He needs to cook, last time I checked. And therefore, we do those safety measurements saying, listen, those safety measurements are not foolproof, but we're trying to sort of not mitigate, trying to balance between the upstairs neighbors who wants to be safe and the downstairs neighbors that need to cook supper for the kids. But it does mean that those 4 amos are really safe enough. So when you cook, you're not doing an avera. You're not sinning and being unsocial, antisocial when you cook, as long as they have the 4 amos, because it's like a maybe. It's like we hope nothing's going to happen. So you're good enough, but you should be aware that if you cook inside with 4 amos above, things may be happening, and then you'd have to pay. I'm simplifying it a little bit, but that's the idea. The fire is really safe proof, and also, mashenka in the kitchen, not safe. It's safe enough for you to cook and hope for the best, but it's not foolproof. By the way, if you have Rachmanos and the guy with the oven, you should know that some people cooked outside. At least in the summer, many people would cook outside the house in the front yard. So maybe it does have that option, but that's besides the point. Yes, Ellen, before going to the next Mishnah, which is important, one more. I'm sorry, it was for, if you don't mind, yeah? Yeah, yes. There's the Heilige Mishnah, 2 Mishnahs in 1 shiur. What can be better than that? Says the Mishnah, Amadlik es a godish vayubo kelim. A person lit a godish, and there were kelim in the godish. By the way, he did not light the godish itself. He was in his field, and eventually the fire hit the godish. And in the godish, inside the heap of barley, wheat, whatever you want, quinoa, whatever there were kelim inside. There were utensils inside. He kept, let's say, his garden utensils inside the heap. Ve'dolku, and they all burnt, made out of wood. They burnt. Rabbi Yehuda says, as we saw a few times before, tamun, you got to pay for tamun. Rabbi Yehuda, as he explains in Daf Samach Amud Aleph, does not believe in tamun. Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in the p'tur of tamun. He learns the psukim differently. So you got to pay for everything that's inside that pile over there. The Chachamim stick to the guns, and they say, no, you only pay for the chitim or soirim. You pay for the actual heap, for the actual outside, whatever that is, the outside grains. You don't pay for what's inside. Tamun, it's hidden according to them. Why? They learned the pasuk. Yeah. Oy godish oy hakama. Remember that? Kama, ma kama begolu, of course begolu. They said that the pasuk is alluding to the fact only something exposed you have, not something hidden. That's the first part of the Mishnah. You don't ask the question, why does Mishnah have to tell me that? Because we've seen it before. I hope you're not asking this question. That's not a smart question to ask. I'm asking this stupid question. Why? Because all those Gemaras before were based themselves on this Mishnah. But the first time the Mishnah is mentioning it is now. You know what I'm saying? Gemaras, many times they base themselves on knowledge of the upcoming Mishnah. Hayogdi, case number 2, which we also saw twice. Case number 2. Let's say next to the heap of grains of whichever other wheat, barley, whatever. A kid, not a human kid, a lamb, yeah, was tied to something, maybe to the godish, unable to run away. The eved samuch, and there was a slave, an eved which was not tied, was sitting there, samuch, right near it. The nisraf imoi, and now everything burnt. The grains, the kids, and the eved, they all got burnt. The eved died. Chayev, the person is chayev to pay for the grains and for the kids. Let me explain. Okay, the case is, you know what? Let me say the reverse case, and then we'll explain everything. However, if there was a reverse case, Eved kofusloi, b'gdi samuchloi. There was an Eved which was tied, unable to run away, or gdi samuchloi, and there was a gdi, there was a kid, a lamb running around free, standing there. V'nisraf imoi, and they all burnt with him. Is patur on the gdi and is patur on the grains. Let me now explain again. Case number 1. If the gdi was tied to the something there, to a post, yeah, and the eved was what? Standing there. The eved, from some odd reason, did not run away when the fire was approaching him. I don't know why, but the eved basically was committing suicide. So Mimela, the eved that was there and got burnt and died, so it's not called that I, the fire igniter, it's not called that I killed him, because it's he killed himself. He chose to stay there. Because I am now not chayev for killing the eved, I'm not chayev now. I'm not chayev to be beheaded because I killed a person. Mimela, what do we say? We say that there's no kimle b'derabba minei. There's no real offense of what? Of killing. The only offense around is what? Is money. Mimela chayev on what? On the money. The fact that the Eved could have run away in a second and he didn't, no apparent reason why he didn't run away. Again, I'm not a nice guy, no shidduch from my daughter, but Lamaisa, it's not considered as a ritzicha mamish, and therefore there's no p'tur of kimla b'draba minei, of getting the stronger offense, yeah? Mimela, you're chayev on killing the gdi, on burning the gdi and the grains. Why do you have to say that the gdi is kofus? Why do you have to say that the gdi is tied? Because if the gdi would have been able to run and it didn't run, then some Rishonim say also I'm potter, because the gdi has seichel to run away. Animals actually are very scared of fire. I know that from I was in South Africa once on a safari trip when I was a child. They're very scared of fire. Immediately, he should have run away. It's not normal, not a natural thing. It's like an oinus. But if the gdi is kofus and the eved is free, there's no kimla b'da'aba minei. You chayiv on everything else. You chayiv on what? On all the money that you ruined the gdi and the grains. However, the second case, the opposite case, eved kofus loy. If the eved misken was tied to a post over there, the gdi samuchloi, and the gdi was around but not tied, I'm potu on paying for what? For the gdi, and I'm potu for paying for the everything. Why? Because I'm chayev misa on the eved. I'm chayev because I killed the eved. If I'm chayev for killing the eved, that's kimel b'da'aba minei. I'm potu on everything else. Now you could say it's shoygig, because when I ignited the fire, lamaisa, and even if I saw that the eved is over there, I didn't shoot a fire arrow into his heart. I didn't do b'mezid. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to kill the eved. Doesn't make a difference. Even if I don't get killed because it's not mezid, it's only called shoygeg or less than shoygeg. Lamaisa kimle does apply. Big chiddush. Kimle b'da'aba minei applies. If I didn't act, there would be mechayev mimisa. Yeah, had it been mezid, mimela potter on the money also. That's a chiddush. So Maisi comes up potter on both sides. We discussed it before, and I think Baruch said it's not fair, but that's what Allah says. So it is fair. We have other solutions also. But Lama said that's what it says over here. It's all up to Kimla b'da'aba minei. Now Rabbeinu Tam says in an earlier part of the Masechta that the chiddush of gdi kofus loy is because usually people don't tie the kid, the goat, whatever, to a post. It's not normal. Gdi usually runs around free. It's not a wild animal. The chiddush is, even though I'm still chayiv. Don't tell me it's not a normal thing. It's an abnormal thing. Maybe fire is not chayiv in something not normal. Maybe fire is only chayiv for doing something normal. No. Fire is chayiv on everything. Normal or not normal, as opposed to show tam, it's chayiv on everything. That's basically in the crux what the Mishnah is saying over here. Continue the Mishnah. Umoidim chachamim le Rabbi Yehuda, no questions whatsoever from now till the end of the year. Umoidim chachamim le Rabbi Yehuda, chachamim admit and agree to Rabbi Yehuda regarding tamun. And this is the exception to the rule which I told you many times, but I didn't tell you what it is. Bira is a big house. Let's say a person on purpose actually threw a torch into someone's house. Sounds familiar, right? It never happens to Jews in Chutz La'aretz. Never did happen, but in theory, yeah. Now someone, let's say, lo leinu, that's one Jew to the other. A Jew threw a lit torch into someone else's house. And what? And now he would say, look, everything indoors, I'm potter, because it's tamun. What do you say? No. Says the Mishnah, that ain't working. You chayav on everything. Because what's inside the house is always there and is normally there. Something that is normally inside, there are two reasons really why it's chayav. Yeah? But one reason says the Mishnah, and that's a huge chiddush now. Listen to the big chiddush. Tamun is only potu when the thing inside the haystack was unexpected to be there. Let's say your wallet, says more later on. Your wallet, who puts a wallet inside a computer? Who puts a computer in the middle of the field inside the haystack? Mashenken, indoors, everybody has a sofa. Well, not everyone, many people. A sofa, table, chairs, and sfarim and things. It's always there. Because it's normally placed over there, you don't have the ptur of tamun. There's also another reason why it's chayiv, which I was hinting to before, but that's what we're saying now. Says the Gemara, we got to continue. Amar Rav Kana. Rav Kana is now qualifying the machloikas regarding tamun. Machloikas, the disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim about tamun, the madlik betoch sheloi, as I told you all the time, he lights the fire in his own domain. It's spread and consumed inside his friend's field. The Rabbi Yehuda mechayev and his ketamun beish. Rabbi Yehuda says you chayev on tamun. Rabbanon patri. Rabbanon exempt for tamun. Aval b'madlik b'toch shel chaveiroi. Madlik b'toch shel chaveiroi. Says Rashi like Peretz was saying, Ein lo reshus avikim abed beyadayim. It's a mazik. You're not a regular fire maker. Mazik beyadayim. If you lit inside your friend's field, you're a mazik me'abed. Wow. You got to pay everything that's inside the field, everything that's inside the tamun. Computer, your wife's jewelry, your grandmother's socks, whatever there is which is not normal to keep, you still have to pay for it because the ptur, the exemption of tamun, is if I innocently yet uncarefully lit it by me and then it spread out, then tamun is patur. He says eish. But if it's not teitze, if I lit the fire inside his place, then I'm chayiv on tamun whatsoever. Now, Omar LeRove says, Rove, according to you, the sefer doesn't make sense. The case of the private house, that somebody threw a torch into the house, something there doesn't make sense. If so, Adetani sefer, when it says in the sefer, Moedim chachamim l'Rabbi Yehuda b'madlik kesabira, shemishalem kol ma shebesoicho, sheken derech bnei adam liach bebatim. Wait, what did you say in the sefer? You know why the person who threw a torch into someone else's house is chayiv to pay for everything? Because derech bnei adam, it's normal for people to put the sofa and the chairs over there. Hey, wait a second. That the Mishnah sounds like what? Let's say somebody has something in his house which is very abnormal. He has an elephant. The guy lives in Ramah Aleph. As much as we have funny animals around, the guy has an elephant inside, the elephant bird. That's not normal to put inside. Would you say that he's potur? Would you say that he's potur according to you? You say it depends if it's normal, not normal. That's what the Mishnah says. Why? According to you, you told me that if I light fire in my friend's domain, I'm chayiv on everything. So the Mishnah should have differentiated it in a different way. Bedidah, within the same realm. When is it true that they argue when a person, according to you, Rav Kahana, the Mishnah should have said, when the Mishnah wants to talk about the private house that burnt because someone threw a torch there, it should have said like this. If I lit in my own domain and it slowly but surely spread into his, then there's the machlokes. But if I lit inside, if I threw a torch into someone else's field or someone else's house, then I'm chayav on everything, regardless whether it's normal to be there or not. Why didn't Mishnah talk about what's normal, not normal to be there? Wrong, according to you. You're saying that if it's in his field, in his domain directly, and not mistakenly spread, but I directly threw the fire there, I'm chayav on everything. The Mishnah doesn't seem to be saying this. Rav Kahana says Rava to Rav Kahana. Hello, Rove. Says Rove, I agree with Rav Kahana and I agree with the Mishnah. Betati pligi. Everything is nice. As the Rav said to the man, you're right, and your wife is right. Lav deal. They argue on both. A person who lit fire in his own house, his own backyard, and it slowly went into his friend's field. That's machlokes number one. Machlokes number one, that the only machlokes is regarding tamun when it started in your own field legally, eventually went there, chayiv and not chayiv on tamun, as opposed to what? Now, so that's one machlokes. As opposed to if you lit in what? In someone else's field directly, then you're chayiv, right? However, there too there's a machlokes. There's a second machlokes. If you threw a torch into your friend's field on purpose, into your friend's house, Abiyuda says you have to pay for everything that's inside, even a wallet, a purse that's inside the haystack. Not normal. Says Rabbi, I don't care. Rabbi is very simple. He doesn't believe in tamun. Rabbi says you always pay whatsoever. Rabbanon Savri, no. Rabbanon argue and say no. If you threw something into his domain and something normal was burnt there, morigin are the threshing utensils. Klei boko are what's used for the for the animals. Those you have to pay because it's normally kept inside the heap of grain. But kelim that are not normally kept in the godish, such as your wallet or your computer, you don't keep them inside your haystack. Loy mishalem, that you don't have to pay. So the two machlokes basically. Rabbi Yehuda is very good. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent and says pay. Rabbi Yehuda has no differences. Chachamim say two things. Chachamim say, if you started the fire by you and it went into someone else's field, you're potter and tamun completely. If you set fire in your friend's domain and then it hit the house or you burned the house, you only chayiv on things that are normally there. But things that are not normally there, are not supposed to be there, you're potter on. That's what Chachamim say. Oh, wow, did it. Shkoyach, thank you very much. And thank you, Rav Simkin, for attempting to help with the Zoom. And thank you to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that we're able to sit and learn Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem. Thank you.